working with budgets. And then in the last, I'd say like year, I've been really focusing a lot on Facebook marketing, and just learning the ins and outs of that, the platform that's involved, the psychology around posting, and just really what's going to attract attention. So what I have for you today is, I'm going to share my screen. Do I have host rights?
Oh, let me change that just in case you don't.
Looks like I do.
You're good.
All right, so bear with me. I have to put this somewhere else so it's not blocking my view of my page. So where I wanted to start off with is ultimately just a good rule of thumb is this highlighted section here is you need to make an emotional deposit with somebody before you make a withdrawal. And that's just simply, you gotta give before you ask. So I see a lot of the times, you know, people just post stuff just to more or less, and it's, I'm not going to say anybody's wrong, because there's probably not, that's probably not the real definition, but yeah, it's, in my opinion, and based on some books, a lot of books that we've read, you know, to really heighten your response and your reciprocation, it's always good to give before asking. And you don't have to give, and then ask. But at least just try to give something of value to your audience, to your consumers, to your clients before you ask for something in return. And then this next thing here, I have like this highlighted asterisk thing. I was just talking to Brittany before we started recording here on a lot of this, and what I'm going to go over is based on a lot of research, a lot of data. And then that said, I just want to make sure that you're never going to perfect something in even a year's time. You know, it's going to be a constant learning process. And GETMO is an acronym that I learned from Craig Groeschel. I was explaining to Brittany as well, on the Enneagram scale, I'm a 1, which is a perfectionist. So I suffer with this a lot. Meaning I probably, if I was working with a piece of content on Facebook to post, I could sit there for hours. And if it's not perfect, I probably would never post it because I was afraid of it not being perfect. So the acronym GETMO simply stands for good enough to move on. So that's what I want to preface this whole thing with is, you know, hey, we're going to learn some stuff here, but the point of it is just try and then learn from that. Okay. Another acronym that I have here, and I learned this from Travis Tom. So he works for Elevated REM, Real Estate Marketing. It's a social media, Facebook. It's primarily Facebook marketing. It's a coaching platform that you can join. But they came up with this acronym called AIDA. And when you are posting something, it's just a good rule of thumb to follow based on the psychology of where our eyes flow when somebody looks at a post. Okay. So if we get back up here, so attention is going to be your image. All right. So the image is probably something that could accommodate 90% of the response. So if somebody's sitting there scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or whatever have you, and their thumb, they're scrolling, you know, what we consider a thumb stopper is that image that's really got to grab somebody's attention. Okay. And that's, again, it's going to take about 90% of the performance of your post. Interests, so you want to engage their mind with something unusual, counterintuitive, and fresh information. So we go over to this graphic here. You can see that the interest starts with the Facebook description. Okay, so we've already captured their attention. And then if you were, I don't have it in front of me, but there's like one of those, I'm sure you can Google it, but there's like one of those things where you look at a Facebook post, it's just a graphic, and it says, okay, your eyes start here, then go here, then end up here, then stop here. Right? So that's kind of where these arrows are pointing. So traditionally, our mind goes to the graphic first, and then it's going to go to the top of the description, which is your interest. So the interest, using this one as an example, is just the interest would be, you know, free list of homes. Okay, so that might kind of pique somebody's interest. And then if we go further down in the copy, the desire. So it kind of pulls in the emotion of somebody's, what they're looking for. The emotional part of this would be perfect for first-time home buyers. or even qualify for special financing. So we want to kind of poke their emotional interest. I guess it's kind of further down the line there, but again, pulling in their actual emotions. And then the last thing would be the action. So we got to tell them what to do. A call to action is a marketing term used heavily for this. And then it comes in the form of a button or something. And we must tell them what to do. Now, I kind of preface this by stating that we have to give before we ask, and we are in this case, you know. So based on the way the hierarchy of this post works, again, we poke their interest by providing them with a pretty cool graphic to look at. Then we gave them a tidbit of information about what the post is about, and then we kind of got their emotional intelligence in there, and then we finally asked. So the call to action, a lot of marketers out there are sometimes afraid to have that because, again, a lot of books and say give before you ask, but asking is very important in this as well. So what are we doing wrong, right? People posting are just more or less posting for posting's sake. You know, a lot of people out there tell you, hey, if you want brand awareness, if you want people to know who you are, if you want to get your word, you know, the word out there that you're in real estate, just keep posting and posting and posting because it's going to pop up in their feed or something. And it's great that you're doing something. It's just you know, you might post for just posting's sake and you have no engagement. You know, your reach might not be super far out there. That said, I think, you know, it depends on, and then I did forget to preface this. This is all based on a Facebook business page, right? So if your personal profiles, it's a bit tough to track because there's just no data on it. But if you do create a Facebook profile, business profile, you have the back end of all that to kind of see what's happening. So posting for the sake of posting, if you are just posting on your personal profile and say, I don't know, you have somewhere in the ballpark of like 500 friends, I guess would be the correct term there. Like 2 to 3% of your 500 friends are going to actually see your post, right? So posting for the sake of posting, if it's not valuable content or if it's not something that engages somebody to take action, you might be wasting some time. So I would look at each piece of content as if it were a movie also. So is it going to stand on its own? Meaning, like, if somebody were to promote a movie, is it gonna affect the audience the way it's intended to? Meaning, when I say that, it's movies have a big budget, you know, they have a lot of like followers and that sort of thing, but based on the actors and that sort of thing. So a movie promotion should be able to stand on its own. This is a one-to-one platform. So this is a really cool tip that I've learned is one-to-one means it's not one-to-many. This is something I personally struggle with. And what I mean by that is if you were to post something, to keep in mind that you're trying to talk to the consumer, the audience member, as if they're viewing it by themselves. Like you're speaking specifically to them versus, hey, everybody, or, you know, hey, all, you know, you're talking versus talking to your audience as a whole. You definitely should see a lot more results based on speaking and using the language and the copy, speaking directly to somebody. And a lot of people are creating contents for themselves versus consumers. Again, I would really strongly suggest you use this portal as an educational based marketing system versus just as something to kind of slap yourself on the back or really kind of, you know, have a lot of pride in yourself, right? And then quality over quantity. Again, I get a lot of questions on how many times should I post a day and how many, or not only a day, but how many times a week, or should I be posting every single day? And the true answer is as long as you have something of quality, then post it. If you feel that you're just posting, again, for the sake of posting, I would probably refrain from doing so. Let's kind of scroll down. Any questions so far?
I think this has been very helpful. One question I have, because of course, as agents, a lot of times what we have to post is like new listing
Mhm.
or just sold. How
Right.
do we make that post be not just a pat on our back and something to just post, but make it valuable for other people?
So,
Any thoughts
so
on that?
so can you give me an example of something?
Like a just sold post, like in Command, there's a lot of just sold templates and you can easily pull in your listing photos and post it to social media like, hey, just sold
Mhm.
123 Main
Yeah.
Street.
So with I would say transactional things, like under contracts, just sold, just that sort of thing. My mind goes to, it's a framework system. It's called StoryBrand. So StoryBrand essentially works in the way of creating your clients and your consumers as the heroes, and you are simply just a guide, right? So meaning we want to make them the hero in the story. A silly analogy I like to use is kind of like Yoda and Luke Skywalker. Yoda was like the guide in all the Star Wars for Luke to get to becoming a Jedi, right? But it's not like, you know, Yoda wanted the credit for it. Same sort of situation, right? So for example, if you just put if a property just closed, I would probably, my mind goes to shouting out the sellers and all the work that they put into the property in order to make that transaction happen. And then vice versa, a buyer, if a buyer were purchasing a property and they just went under contract, I would probably go to something, hey, these buyers, in a this super competitive market, they got their pre-approval in place. They had to do this, that, and that in order to do so. This is the struggles that they had going through the process. They had to live with their in-laws because their property already sold or something to that nature. I would just really talk them up and then create them, as the hero is kind of where my mind would go with that.
I love that. That's very helpful.
So that said, it's a testing. It's always going to be an ongoing testing process. So, what essentially, what are the three phases to a viral process? And this I got from Brendan Kane. So using the book was 1 million followers. He came up with this viral process. And it's really the same process to test anything. Engineers use this a lot. The book basically kind of went down to marketing as well, but it comes down to scientists. It's the same. It's just the same learning process, and it starts with research, right? So what I would suggest is if you really want to learn how to improve your content, to really make it have the potential to go viral. It starts with research. So identify other content creators and their successes and failures. Make a list of those references. And then when doing this, just rate them in any kind of rating system that you want. In this case, it could be gold, silver, and bronze. And then make a list of why those posts are performing and why they're not. And a good resource for this is called the Facebook ad library. So you can actually go to that resource, just Google Facebook ad library, it will come up, and you can plug in basically any sort of industry out there and see what sort of brands out there are running ads. And then you can look those ads up and see the data on them and what's making them run and what's making them fail. Okay, so it's a great resource. And then from there, so you have your resource, or you have your research. And then the next thing is to hypothesize. So based on this research that I just learned, I'm gonna come up with a format, a story or theme that engages with audiences based on what I think might work. It's just using the data, right? And then you have to test it. So create that content, put it out there, and see how it performs. And then based on the data of that new content, just pivot. So did it work or didn't it? So you can, I know a lot, and I apologize about this, so I don't know 100% if Command has all the analytics of everything that a post does, but regardless, they are a partner with Facebook. KW, they partnered together for that. So you can always go to the back of Ads Manager and you'll be able to find all that data. Okay.
Yep. So for the command folks, when you run a campaign through Facebook, there is reporting on how well those posts are doing. I'll put an article in the chat for you.
Okay. And then, so to kind of go on a deeper level of that, so 3 ways to generate a following. So now I've kind of understand the psychology and the dynamics of how a post works. I know how to kind of test it if it's not working. But really, how do I create and generate, grow a following, right? First one is pretty simple. Just do it organically. And it's just you spending no money, posting stuff. And then based on that, if you compound that, you consistently do that over time, say for a year or two, the compound effect would work, just by consistency itself should grow organically. Though it's a bit tough, but you got to be very disciplined and chisel down, your accountability on doing it, right? The next step would be maybe if a piece were to just go viral. A lot of people that happens to, there's just something about a post that they create where it makes an emotional deposit on somebody, and then they want to share that, and then that person wants to share it, and then it just kind of blows up and the whole world knows about it now, right? That's an easy way to kind of grow a following as well. And then, as command lead ads and that sort of thing is another way. It's a great way. And you can do it fairly inexpensive as well. So that's kind of hand in hand with your organic, growth, but it kind of exponentially just speeds up the process. And then that said, the number one key to success in scaling somebody's massive audiences is getting people to share. It's amazing what happens once you actually do have something that goes viral, and just seeing all those shares and just the reach that it gets out of it then. So if you can, it's something that I personally haven't really kept in the back of my mind, when creating something. Okay, how am I going to make this that just everybody wants to share, right? It's just something that it will help grow without any extra money. And then again, just to kind of, now I'm going to kind of get into targeting and what sort of audiences and that sort of thing might be helpful to you. Before I get into that though, just wanted to make sure nobody had any questions regarding just the testing process and kind of how to make something go viral. No? Cool.
No, that was good.
So our audience targeting. So there's all sorts of ways to create audiences in this system. Here are just some general rules of thumb and kind of some buckets that you could put them into. So again, so as far as, what the point would be is, you want to make sure, so click-through rate is kind of getting a little bit further down the road, but click-through rate would be how many times somebody actually clicked on your post or clicked on the link inside that. And 1% or higher is considered good. So again, Getmo, good enough to move on. 1% is good enough to move on. Copywriting must capture attention and tell them what to do next. And then again, thumb stopping, ad creative. So what that information is going to do is then get us into, just again, our targeting and what the different kind of categories we could do to kind of start those audiences. So broad interest targeting, it's just simply allowing Facebook to do its thing. So there's no specific keywords or attributes or any sort of data used based on this. Facebook has 50,000 data points on every user, and you can just post something and allow Facebook's algorithms to do their thing and get your message out there. You can also speak directly to somebody. So again, no sort of audiences are created, but the content that you're creating has the right message to reach your audience. Okay. And then the same thing with like the creative, you know, there's just something that is maybe something super inspiring that it kind of organically gets in front of them, right? But there is no audience created. It's basically, again, just letting Facebook's machine inside there to learn what your content is sharing, and they'll put it out there to the masses. Personal database, or your SOI. So this is a very important one. You can create what's called a custom audience by just simply uploading your database, your CSV file. That one I would probably make as a mandatory. If you are getting into some Facebook audience creation, I would most definitely have that one on your list. That way you can make sure that your closest, you know, friends and family members and your past clients, anybody that knows, you know, is familiar with you, it will make sure that your information and your content, your message is getting in front of them.
And the cool feature in Command is there's actually a button that all you have to do is click, and it'll target your database. And all of that is in the article in the chat as well. So if you decide to run it through Command, you have that option. Or if you decide to upload your database CSV directly to Facebook Ad Manager, I could always help you with that, as I just learned how to do that, thanks to John. But there is an article in the chat for you to help you, walk you through step by step on how to do that in Command as well.
And then, so again, we talked about some Facebook, just allowing Facebook to kind of do its thing based on its algorithms and then all the data points that it has inside its system. And then your own personal sphere, which again, highly recommend that one. Then we can kind of get into some more top level targeting. So there's in the back end there's some, you can add some interest-based things. So key point indicator targeting. So an example I like to use is like, so imagine there's some person online looking for mortgage calculators, or trying to understand what equity they might have in their home. So those behavioral type things, you can actually add as points of targeting in Facebook as well. So for example, somebody's that's house hunting, I think that's an actual keyword. Credit Karma is one, mortgage calculators. So just, again, kind of those types of behavioral type things, you can add those as interests for your targeting. Real estate apps, so KW app, Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, Redfin, are all sorts of things that you can add in there in order to target people that are based, you know, and have some sort of interest in our industry. And then what the end result. So someone buying, someone selling, investing, you know, so those are, again, words that we can use to target. I did fail to, and I think I have it down here somewhere. I did. So I should have probably started this by stating that based on our industry, so Facebook has what's called a special ads category. So it's used for employment, it's used for housing, and it's used for, I believe, credit. So it basically restricts us from targeting really deep. It's kind of like the fair housing rules slightly. I don't know specifically how well that matches up, but that's the best comparison that I can think of. So we can't really target based on sex. We can't target based on age. So it has to be men and women. It has to be all ages. Location's another one. So there's a minimum requirement of where your ad's coming from, that you have to be at least 15 mile radius from there. So there's some small restrictions in the way Facebook works based on those three things. And we unfortunately are one of them. But nonetheless, you can use all these other things that I'm telling you to combat that, okay? So the next thing I'm going to talk about is behavioral test-based retargeting. So people that watched or interacted with, so say you did a Facebook Live, or you cut a video or something, and there's an actual time frame to that. You know, you can set up audiences that interact or watched a set amount of time. There's all sorts. It could be, I don't know, I forget. It could be like 15% of your video, 30% of your video. It could be a through play. So through play is at least 15 seconds is what Facebook considers a through play, regardless of how long the video would be. It would be 15, as long as they watch 15 seconds, then you could use that as an attribute. You can use just somebody that's simply engaged with your page, somebody that's engaged with your event. And it gets super, super deep to the point where, okay, you created a Facebook event. For example, it might be an open house, right? You create an open house as a Facebook event. You can create a target that's somebody that clicked on the event, somebody that marked interested, somebody that marked going. So it gets super, super, super deep, you know, all these attributes. Somebody that's visited your website. You can also set up a pixel in Facebook to kind of track them and where they're moving and that sort of thing. If you are creating lead ads in Facebook and Command, you can create audiences on people that clicked on your form, somebody that filled out the form, maybe somebody that clicked on the form but they didn't fill out the form. You know, there's all sorts of different attributes in there as well. And then, as I mentioned, we are involved in the special ad audiences here. So based on all these things above, you can also create what's called a lookalike. So again, Facebook has 50,000 data points on each of its users. So therefore, if you have a database list of, say, let's call it 1,000 people, it can take 1,000. I don't know, what is that? It's like 500,000 data points based on 1,000 person list. It can take that $500,000 data points and create what's called a lookalike based on that. And it can also match it to a percentage, meaning I would like it to be somewhere, once we get into special ad audiences, it could be, well, I only want it 1% of my audience, or I want it 5% of what, you know, might look like my audience. So you can even, again, it just keeps, doubling basically on how many people and what your audience can grow to. Again, the special ads just has those restrictions. And yeah, there are those housing, employment, and credit. So just you got to be aware of that. And then other small tidbits is another way to kind of grow an audience is by creating like support groups or Facebook groups. You can make them private. You can require people to join by invite, and then just kind of encourage that. And then small tips for that and what to even share in those groups is just, again, positivity, educational stuff, resources, etc. So that's kind of where what I had prepared for you guys.
That was amazing. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions, any thoughts that you need a little clarified? Anything that maybe we could make a separate class out of, down the road as a follow-up, maybe you implement one thing at a time and then you get to a certain point and you're like, I might need a separate training on this piece alone.
Hey, John, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You always hear about, oh, you should post this on certain days and times. Have you found any credibility to any of those so-called studies that have been done?
So that's a great question.
Maybe it depends on the content.
Yeah, no, it really, it depends on how finicky and how perfect you want to get it. So again, Facebook has analytics and data in the back end, and I'm sure Command has this too. You can actually go and look to see when your audience is on Facebook and when they engage. The thing is, it's probably a big scale of the matter of 4 or 5 hours. So at that point, it's just like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't think it matters. It doesn't really matter because you can, the difference, as far as the data that I've tracked, like there might be the difference of, and again, it all comes down to your audience to begin with, but say it might be 1% difference on a 5-hour increment, like, so it's just like, am I going to miss that first 1% by posting it too early, or am I going to miss that, the 1% by posting it too late, so it's not super significant. Everybody's on Facebook all the time is the point I guess I'm trying to make. You know what I mean? So, and then days of the week, I mean, that I would probably have a little bit more focus around. My experience, and everybody's different, but my experience is that like the weekends are probably not as fruitful because people are off. They're probably off actually doing something versus staring at Facebook. Thursdays seem to be somewhat of a hot day. But again, it's everybody is gonna have a different audience, different types of personalities and that sort of thing in their audience, what they're doing. But I would say it probably doesn't matter. Just again, it comes down to, if you're gonna post something, just make sure there's quality to it. And just, have in the back of your mind, kind of run through this framework, and then just do it good enough to move on. Now, that said, I mean, this is probably more of an advanced type thing, but once you start getting into ads, if you start promoting and boosting and creating ads out of your content, a lot of my coaches have told me that it's best based on the ad auction. Now, you can post it at any time of the day, but not to start the ad until midnight. And the reason is because you'll probably see a more cost-effective ad out of it. You don't have as much competition in the auction, in the ad auction. Other competitors, other people just really trying to absorb other people's mind share and that sort of thing. By starting the ad at midnight, and then some people are like, well, who's up at midnight looking at Facebook? Why would I want to spend my money and promote it at that time? There's a ton of people, and it just starts the auction off on a better foot is really what it comes down to.
Thank you, John.
All right, so here comes from the old gal,
Mm-hmm.
because I am not, and Brittany knows this, I am, as far as like Facebook, like I'm the one that's doing our team stuff, but the last time I posted was like May 7th. I'm just not one of those people to do that. I don't have that quirky little thing about what to post, how to post. It takes me forever. Brittany, what did I tell you the last time? It took me like 3 hours or something to put something together.
Yeah.
It's not my realm of things. And like, I can go to the website for national days, like whatever the national days are, but people are only going to want to see so many of those from me.
Mm-hmm.
So like I did a post for myself. I had a lot, which is still for sale. And when I first posted it, I got a lot of interaction. I got a lot of likes, got people interested on other agents, but guess what? The lot is still for sale. So I'm like, I just don't have that little niche because that's not me. And I'm like, what do you just say to somebody like me that,
It's absolutely normal. So what it comes down to is I've been there at some point. And I know Brittany and I talked about this too. So about scheduling, so scheduling, what am I going to do to schedule my posts and that sort of thing. That is a very, very good suggestion. I would just be careful with it. And the reason I say that is because in 2019, I probably took, it was probably the last quarter of 2019. I probably spent 5, 10, 15, 20 hours on creating a schedule for the entire year of 2020. Coronavirus hit. Completely threw that schedule out the window, right? I mean, what it comes down, what I focused on was just like local events, so like I mapped out all the car shows and tried to announce all those at a certain time, those were canceled. So I would just be careful on when, because the biggest thing is, again, what this whole talk was about is just kind of trying to get you to go viral. And what,
Mhm.
you know, again, we want to make sure that we're giving our information out. We're an industry, a real estate industry. So it's not like we can
Mhm.
really talk about, but we can,
Yeah.
like political things. Ugh, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Stuff like
Yeah.
that. Aspirational things, inspiring things, comedy, pets. You know, those are the things that people consume, you know, and if there's a way
Mhm.
we can kind of transition what our message into something like that, you know, that
Mhm.
that's always a good thing. But I would use those things, something educational, something funny. Um, and even if you were to do it like 2 times a week, you know, maybe scheduling, you know, 2 weeks in advance, hey, these are the topics that I'm going to try to hit on. Um, and kind of just take it from there, and don't beat yourself up if you miss something, because
Mhm.
if you're missing something, odds are right now is that you're missing a post just for posting's sake, right? So
Yeah.
unless you really have a reason to post, you know, I really wouldn't do it. But if you are,
Mhm.
to kind of save yourself some time, I would suggest maybe considering maybe a weekly or bi-weekly kind of schedule. Even a month would work. It's just, I, it's again, I would just be kind of, because you never know what happens, right?
Mhm.
That said, listing posts go in our team's experience are one of the most fruitful things. People like to click and flick through photos and that sort of thing. They like to kind of
Yeah.
put themselves in their dream house and that sort of thing. So that's based on what, you know, the research that I've been doing on our page is those are super fruitful.
Mhm. Okay.
Any other questions?
That was super helpful. I appreciate you taking your time and meeting
Yep.
with us
Mhm.
today. And I'm
Yeah.
happy to see everyone who's on this call has at least asked me one question about social media. Um, so I just think,
One.
yeah, multiple. I was being conservative.
Mhm.
But no, this was great. I definitely picked up a few nuggets that I'm going to use for our mega camp advertising. Anybody else learn something that they're going to implement this week? Show of hands. Mike Braddock, I know you are. And then the other Brittany Giles.
Yeah, the other Brittany. Gosh.
All
Jeez.
right. Well, thank you, John. We
Yeah.
won't take up too much more of your time,
Hey, you're
but
very welcome. And
yeah,
if you need, if there's any follow-up questions, or if you're just struggling with something, just hit me up, shoot me an email, give me a call. I'm happy to open ear.
Awesome.
all right. Thank you
I'll
all.
be that one, John.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
Have a good day,
Okay,
everyone.
see ya.
Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, John.
Bye.